Oh, it's not good. Not good. Oh, so bitter. And it's stuck in my teeth. That was a terrible idea. Hey, what's up, my friends? Today we're looking at the Wonder Oven by the company called Our Home. Hey, that's me, looking all cute. And I got the company name completely wrong for the entirety of the video. So from here on, when I say Our Home, just know what I mean is our place. All right, back to the video. This is a ridiculously cute looking 6-in-1 toaster oven or countertop oven. Now this little oven and its company make a lot of claims about its performance. So in this video, we're gonna conduct 7 tests. Is it really as good as they say it is, or is it all hype? So here's the 7 tests that we're gonna run on the Wonder Oven. The first test is the preheat sprint. They really tout how quickly this thing preheats so that it's ready to cook quicker than your traditional oven, which would make sense because it's a smaller space, but we're gonna test it out. Second is temp accuracy and temperature recovery. How well does it hold a temperature? And once the door's been open for a couple of seconds, how quickly does the temperature recover? The third is how even is the heat inside the oven? The fourth is the air fryer crunch. How moist and juicy does the inside stay, but does it get that nice crisp on the outside? I don't doubt it'll get the crunch on the outside, but the question is, does it dry out the food that we're trying to make crunchy? Number 5 is bake control. Does it bake evenly, or does it burn the outside and leave the inside doughy? Next is capacity. How big of a pizza can we actually cook in this oven, and how long does it take? And finally, number 7, so important but often overlooked, what is it like to clean it? It's also really important to me for you to know that I'm not being paid for this test. They did not send me this unit. I bought it with my own money, and this is in no way sponsored by Our Home. But before we jump into our tests, in case you're not familiar with it, I just want to give you a quick rundown of the Wonder Oven, its features, and what comes with it. Now, the actual unit of the Wonder Oven is completely made of metal, with the exception of the knobs on the actual unit. We already talked about the looks a little bit, but I think it's really well designed. It looks like a kind of a retro old oven with the handle, the way that it opens, the knobs, even the sounds that it makes. Check this out. I love that. The controls for the Wonder Oven are super simple. There's only 3 knobs. First one is your temperature knob. It goes from 200 degrees to 450 degrees. The next is your mode knob. Now this mode is usually going to relate to fan speed within a toaster oven or a air fryer. So depending on what mode you have is going to determine how much air circulation happens from that fan. It's also called convection. So the different modes that you have are roast, toast, air fry, bake, broil, and reheat. And finally, you have your timer knob. It goes from 1 minute to 60 minutes. It has this glass front, and when you do turn it on, it has a light that turns on the interior of the oven. Here's another really interesting feature that I haven't seen in another air fryer or toaster oven, which is you can actually add water so that it adds moisture to your bake. So if you're trying to revive some bread or something like that, and you want it to stay soft and moist on the inside and get that kind of tougher, chewy crust, you can actually take a cup full of water, dump it right here in the top of the air fryer or the toaster oven, put that cap on, and it's going to slowly release that moisture into the oven as it bakes. It's a pretty cool idea. Now, accessories that come with the Wonder Oven is you have a baking rack right here, just your very simple, standard stainless steel baking rack. You have a cookie sheet that also comes with it. What it says in the description is ceramic non-toxic coating. You also have an air fryer basket. And lastly, you have a crumb tray that you can put in the bottom of the oven to keep the heating element nice and clean. All right, let's get into it. Test number 1 is the preheat test. We're gonna see how long it actually takes for the Wonder Oven to preheat to 350 degrees compared to how long it takes my normal kitchen oven to preheat to 350 degrees. Now, I will be shocked if it takes as long as a larger oven to preheat to that temperature, but I wanna test it out anyway. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get my handy dandy probe thermometer here. We're gonna place it inside the oven. Ready? Let's go. Okay, this is so interesting. We almost reached 300 degrees, and now it's gone down probably 30 more degrees. So we're at 8.5 minutes. Again, we went up and we flirted with 300. We got to about 302, and now it's back down to 290. I have the temperature set at 350. The heat is pumping out of the backside of this oven like crazy. I don't know that we're gonna reach 300 degrees, so I'm gonna crank this up to 450. It took 11 minutes to get up to 350, and I had to crank the temperature control to 450 to actually get it to go to 350. So as a control, I'm gonna preheat my kitchen oven to 350 degrees to see how long it actually takes it to get up to temperature compared to, I mean, the test is already a failure for the Wonder Oven because it never even got to that temperature, but just for kicks and giggles, let's measure how long it takes my oven to get to 350. So I'm gonna set it to 350. I'm going to hit start here and start here. So it took almost 7 minutes exactly for my kitchen oven to get preheated to 350. So obviously, the results on the preheat test was a complete failure. I also want to mention, in bake mode, in a quiet kitchen, the max decibels that the Wonder Oven reached was 73.8. So for an air fryer, that's relatively quiet. All right, so test number 2 is temperature accuracy and recovery. Now, accuracy is not looking good so far. I've got it set at 450. We've stalled out at 400, and it keeps dipping way down below 400 and then coming back up. I'm gonna open this door for 10 seconds, let the temperature come down, put it back, and we'll see how long it takes to get back to temperature. I'm not sure what's going on with this oven. It's had a good 30 degrees fluctuation as I've been running it straight. Okay, so we've really leveled out at about 360, so that's the temperature we're trying to get back up to, but mind you, I do have it set at 450, and we're struggling to keep it at 360, but I'm gonna open this for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Having it open took us down to 345. Let's start the timer to see how long it takes to get back up to 360. So it only took about 6 seconds to get back up to temperature after having the oven open. However, because of the drastic temperature variation of 30 to 40 degrees, temperature accuracy is out the window. So for this test, again, it's a fail. Okay, so test number 3 is what I'm calling the heat map. We want to see how even the toast feature is, or how evenly the heat is distributed throughout the oven. So what I've got is I've got 4 pieces of white bread here, all from the same loaf. We're gonna set this thing on toast. We're gonna put the toast in. I'm not sure how long it needs to go for, but once we start seeing some browning on the toast, we're gonna take them out, flip the toast over, keep them in the same spot, and see where the most toasting shows up on which piece of bread. All right, the toast is in, let's go. All right, these are starting to look very toasty. Let's open it up here. A couple things I wanna look at. So this is a bit darker than the front side of the oven. I mean, that feels pretty natural to me. Let's flip these pieces of toast over. All right, so not much on the back side at all. I don't know what's gonna happen to the bottom side of this when we toast the top side. So let's check it out. All right, we ended up toasting these at about 3 minutes per side. Overall, it's a pretty even toast. I'm actually kind of impressed. What I wanna know now is because we had toasted that top side first and then flipped it over and put it back in, what happened with that first side that we toasted? So let's take a look. It's not any darker really than it was when it went in. So it only toasts on the top. Now, one of the true tests is, did we get a nice toast on the outside of the bread and keep it nice and soft in the inside? So let's see, let's break this open and see how it looks. Very crunchy on the outside and still super soft on the inside. The Wonder Oven toasted this bread way more evenly than even my countertop toaster, and it left the inside nice and soft. The heat distribution test is a huge success. All right, our next test is the air fryer crispness test. Now what we're going for is that nice crispness on the outside, but still moist on the inside. I have real chicken nuggets from Costco. We love these chicken nuggets because they're real pieces of chicken. They're not that paste that's been shaped into something, some animal or something like that. The other reason that these are really good for this test is that they vary in size, and because they're real pieces of chicken, we can still maintain some of that moisture on the inside if it's a good air fryer. I'm also gonna measure the sound on the air fry mode of the Wonder Oven, because air fry mode is usually when these units are the loudest. So we're gonna pop this thing over to air fry. Now the bag, instructions on the bag of the chicken nuggets say to cook at 360. Now this is gonna be interesting because we already know from the temperature test that this thing doesn't get quite as hot as you are setting it on the dial. And it says to cook it for 10 minutes. So I'm gonna set my timer for 10 minutes. We're gonna cook it at 360, air fry mode. We're gonna measure the sound. Let's go. Now, one thing I'm noticing just even as loading this oven, my hand is so close to this lid, it makes me nervous when I load the rack up. It looks like we've reached a max decibel of 74 in the air fryer mode. Compared to some other air fryers that I've tested, that's still relatively quiet, but you definitely know its presence. Done. All right, let's check out these chicky nug nugs. All right, so let's go with a smaller piece. Oh, shoot. Completely soft. Not a morsel of crisp on this anywhere. Okay, there's a little bit of crunch to it, but not a lot. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the chicken is still very moist and it's warm all the way through. I'm gonna put these in for another 4 minutes and see where it gets us. I had to turn the camera back on really quick because I wanted to show you the timer's still going, but the oven completely shut off. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's overheated. All right, that's another 4 minutes. A total of about 14 minutes. Because the timer's not exact, it's really hard to tell. But even just by touching it, they're definitely still not as crispy as my other air fryer. So let's go ahead and cut one of these open. Let's take this piece right here. It's a good medium piece. It's still a bit squishy, still very juicy on the inside. So it hasn't dried the chicken out, that's a good sign, but it has taken a bit longer than most air fryers that I use to cook these chicken nuggets. And we're still not done. It needs more time to get that crunch. All right, so these either need another 5 minutes in this air fryer to really crisp up, which would be a total of 20 minutes, which is almost double what I'm used to doing in my own air fryer that I absolutely love. And it's a pretty uneven cook as well. I'm not impressed with the air fry on this oven. When I consider my extensive experience in testing other air fryers, I'm gonna consider this test a fail. All right, so our next test is a bake control test. I've got some cookie dough from Trader Joe's that I've put on the cookie sheet or the baking sheet for the oven. The instructions on these cookies is 350 degrees for 10 to 12 minutes. Now, I'm gonna follow the instructions on the package exactly, but we already know that this oven varies in temperature pretty wildly, and it's a bit cooler than what you actually set on the dial, but let's see what happens. What we're looking for in this bake of these cookies is a nice crispy bottom and crispy top with a soft inside, not burnt on the bottom or darker on the bottom than the rest of the cookies. Just that nice even bake with a nice gooey texture in the middle. Let's check it out. All right, cookies are done. I feel like I'm playing with my little Easy Bake oven in the 80s. If you're old enough to remember the Easy Bake oven, tell me in the comments. All right, let's take a look at how these look. Okay, first reaction is they're looking a little dark on the bottom and pretty light on the top. Come on, get off, get off. Uh-oh, that's gonna fall right through the cookie rack or the cooling rack. So we're pretty light on the top, definitely dark around the edges. Let's see what it's like on the underside. A little bit darker, but I definitely wouldn't say that's burnt by any means. All right, so let's break this baby open and see what it's like. Very gooey. It really depends on how you like your cookies, to be honest. I'm not a raw in the middle cookie guy. I like there to be a good bake, but not too much burnt on the edge, which is a challenging balance to keep even inside the oven. All right, in the middle of this cookie, it's still completely doughy. Some people really love that, but when I bite into the edge of the cookie, it's completely crisped around the edges. It's overdone in my opinion. So we're doing either pass or fail on these tests. Now, if it was for me in the way that I like my cookies baked, this would be a fail. But I actually know even my kids, most of my family would actually really enjoy the bake on these cookies. So I'm gonna say it passes. Okay, so our next test is capacity, and I wanna stretch the limits just a little bit on this oven. So I thought, what better way to see how big of a pizza I can make and how well it does baking a pizza. So we're gonna bake it on the baking sheet right here. And this baking sheet is, the actual food spot is 8 inches by 9 inches. So really a round pizza, the biggest we can have is an 8-inch pizza. Now I did wonder what it would be like to just fill this whole thing with dough and have a nice square pizza. And that's another test for another day, but I am gonna roll my dough out just to a circle in that 8-inch maximum. And then we're gonna throw some toppings in it. I'm gonna make a spicy honey pepperoni pizza. I'll give you the recipe as I do it. We're gonna throw it on this pan and see how the oven does in the bake. I start by putting a little olive oil on the countertop so the dough doesn't stick. And then I spread the dough out and use a rolling pin to get a nice, thin, even dough. Next, I take some delicious garlic marinara sauce and spread it evenly across the dough. Then a nice Italian blend of cheese, pepperoni, some crushed red pepper, and some honey. All right, so I've got my pizza assembled. The oven's been preheating for about 8 minutes now at 450 degrees. In reality, about 380, between 350 and 403, whatever. So I'm gonna put the pizza in now and we're gonna bake it for 10 to 12 minutes. And then we're gonna check the crust and see if it's baked all the way through and how it looks. Okay, so this is interesting. We still have probably 6 to 7 minutes left, and the cheese is already starting to look really burnt, which is really interesting because I cook our pizza at 475 in our oven with less time, and the cheese never looks like that. I may need to pull this out early and give it a check. Okay, so we've gone a total of about 7 minutes now. I'm gonna turn this off, and we're gonna give this thing a check because it's looking like it's gonna burn. I mean, right now, it looks actually really good. Really, the crust is really brown back here where the back of the oven was, and it's really light in the front of the oven. That's, you know, that's pretty easy to remedy. You can just rotate it, and with really any oven, you're gonna have it cooler in the front and hotter in the back. Let's see if we can get a view on the backside bake of this pizza without ruining it. Let's see. Okay. So it looks pretty even. Again, a little bit darker back here in the back, a little bit lighter here in the front. Bake on it looks pretty good. It looks like it's baked all the way through, even in the middle. It could be a little doughy. Let's see this piece and try it out. No, that's baked. Oh, it tastes delicious. That honey and pepper together with the pepperoni. But however, the top of this, I was wrong. It is a bit doughy. So there's a good layer of dough on the top of this pizza before you get to the cooked crust. Despite a little bit of doughiness in the middle of the pizza, I still think the Wonder Oven handled this test pretty well. I'm gonna call this one a success. Okay, our last test is cleanup. In order to test what it's like to actually clean this thing up, is we're gonna bake some of the worst things onto the baking sheet and the baking rack or the oven rack to see how hard it is to get these things off once they've been baked on. And if there's any staining or things that we just absolutely can't get off. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put some mozzarella, we're gonna do a little bit of honey, and we're gonna do a little bit of barbecue sauce. All right, so now I'm gonna bake this sheet at 450 for a couple of minutes, get it really nice and cooked, and then we'll see what it's like to get it off. So this stuff's baked on pretty well. We've been running it for probably about 8 minutes. Yeah, nice and burnt. Anybody want a snack? So part of this is I want the cooking sheet to cool down a little bit. Sometimes things get more sticky. Oh wow, look at that. Cheese doesn't even attempt to stay. None of the cheese stuck to either the baking sheet. Look, I can just move any of this cheese around, or the oven rack. Now the honey and the barbecue sauce is probably a little bit of a different story. So let's check out first how the honey did. I just want to see if I can just scrape it right off, just like the cheese did. And I can, well, yeah. I mean, it's pretty much just popping right off like little pieces of candy. That's pretty amazing. I wonder how this tastes. Oh, it's not good. Not good. Oh, so bitter. And it's stuck in my teeth. That was a terrible idea. Barbecue sauce is just coming right off as well. Oh, look at that. Pops right off. Doesn't stick at all. The honey comes right off too, with barely even a scrape with a plastic spatula. That's really cool. Cleanup is a huge pass. Very successful. All right, my friends, final thoughts on the Wonder Oven. It's very, very cute. It is fun to use. Like I said, it makes me feel like a kid again. Makes me feel like I'm using a miniature oven. I just think it's a blast to use. Obviously, there are some huge discrepancies in temperature. I wouldn't trust it to important meals, and it's gonna take a little bit getting used to figure out how it actually cooks things. But once I figured it out, and the few things that we did cook, it did a pretty good job. The weakness for me is the air fryer. It takes a long time and it still never crisps up those nuggets. But the results from the bake and the toast mode were actually really good. And as always, I put a link to the Wonder Oven in the description and a pinned comment. If you use that link, it's an affiliate link. It throws me a couple bucks, offsets the cost and time of making these videos, and it doesn't cost you anymore, so thank you for doing that. My friends, my hope is that this video has both been entertaining and informative to you to decide whether or not the Wonder Oven is a good purchase for you. If you have any suggestions, corrections, or ideas, throw them in the comments below. Happy cooking, my friends. Bye.